Imagine working your entire life, saving enough that you can maybe buy a house at the end of your career. Or maybe you want to save enough that you can retire whenever you want and you can live off of those savings. Or maybe your goal is to save enough that you have some money left in your child's college fund. But then on the other hand, imagine spending all that amount of cash on a piece of paper, a qualification, an MBA. I'm Mohammed Ishlal, and I'm a double MBA from LUMS INSEAD. And today I want to talk about the costs, the ROI, and whether an MBA is actually worth it. Spoiler, I think I want to be honest at the very start of this video. I think it's virtually impossible that this degree teaches you anything that would be worth $250,000 price tag. So then, what exactly does it do? But before we get into the numbers, let's look at the history on how exactly did MBA start. Back in 1900s, Harvard was the first program that started the MBA program. And the need for that was that with the Industrial Revolution, there was a need for managers who could probably run the factory more efficiently and effectively. But what we've seen is over the past couple of years, those needs have evolved. Now we're looking at MBAs which are focusing on leadership, AI, sustainability. So today, MBA graduates are virtually present in every industry you can imagine. Banking, consulting, consumer goods, retail, construction. Today, Harvard has produced countless Fortune 500 C-suite executives. What all of this combined does is that it sets MBA sort of like the gold standard of education at the moment. But I think what's really important in all of this is that we try and understand whether or not you're getting any value out of this degree. And what we're going to do is we're going to break this down into numbers. We're going to see how much does it cost. What is the opportunity cost from that? And we'll talk more in detail about this. And how long does it take for you to get your money back? And is it actually worth it or not? So let's start by talking about the costs. And MBAs aren't just expensive, I believe they're insanely expensive. One example would be to give you an idea of how expensive there is, that there's apparently a rumor that Harvard has a specialized yacht fund. Obviously, it's just a rumor and that doesn't exist, but that gives you an idea of the kind of expectations people have from an MBA. What I've done is I've taken 3 examples, 2 from the US and 1 from Europe, and I've tried to take the top business schools as a reference point to give you an idea of how expensive they are. Let's start with Harvard. The tuition alone costs you around $76,410 per year. This does not include living expenses, traveling expenses, health insurance, nothing. And this is per year. The second school I've chosen is Wharton. Wharton costs you a whopping $84,830, once again without any of the extra expenses. This is tuition alone. And INSEAD, it's the stuff of nightmares. It's the most expensive on a per year basis. It's $106,700, but it includes health insurance at least. But we'll talk more in detail on what exactly the costs are. So what I've done is I've made a table for you to see the overall tuition expenses. Along with the tuition expense at Harvard, there are living expenses of approximately $40,000 per year. Then there's another health insurance expense of $4,000 per year. Similarly with Wharton, you've got $33,000 and $4,000 in living and health expenses. And with INSEAD, you've got $25,000 per year. And that's it's a ballpark figure. Honestly, living expenses and health insurance expense is still a fixed expense, but living expenses is up to you. People at INSEAD travel like anything. I travel a lot, so it depends on how much you travel, where do you travel, how do you travel. So there are quite a few variables, so which is why I've taken a ballpark figure of $25,000. Maybe it costs you less at Harvard, or maybe it costs you more at INSEAD. So it's up to you on how much you want to spend. But now talking about the per year cost and how much would this cost you in total, Harvard alone, because it's on a per year basis, you have to multiply all of these costs by 2. It's going to cost you about $246,264 in 2 years. Whoa, that's a lot of money. Wharton crosses the $250,000 mark. It's $257,000, $292. And INSEAD would cost you about $130,000, $140,000. Now, imagine paying this amount of money. At the end, you do not want to get just a piece of paper. What you're expecting, I don't know, man. I would probably expect a platinum credit card with lifetime access to business class flights or business class lounges at least. But that's a lot of money. it is a lot of money. And I think I'm sort of late to think about this, but yeah, I spend a lot of money on this. But now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about that, how do you make this money back? But before that, I believe there's another cost, and that's one of the bigger costs depending on what job you currently have. That's going to be the opportunity cost, which I want to add into this. So opportunity cost essentially is that if you weren't doing an MBA, you would essentially be earning, and that amount of earning is actually money you're leaving on the table that you're not using anymore if you continued your job or whatever you were doing. So that is going to be the opportunity cost. And let's say, for example, an average salary pre-MBA is $80,000 per year. So you're essentially losing $160,000 for a 2-year program. And for INSEAD, that would be $80,000. So for a shorter program, you're essentially saving yourself the opportunity cost for 1 year, and also some amount of dignity whenever you're checking your bank balance and it still has some money in it. So I think shorter programs are better because I've done a 2-year program and a 1-year program, and essentially the amount of learning that you have within that's limited, and that's mostly cramped up within the first year. But then again, to each their own, depending on where you want to go, which school is your preference. And maybe you're a sponsored student and you want 2 years off and you want to enjoy 2 years of your life. Or maybe you're someone who feel like they're towards the middle of their career and they do not have 2 years to waste on this, and they've got a family to support or whatever, depending on your personal circumstances. Maybe that's not something for you. So now I feel like this is the moment of truth where you actually realize how much of a bill your MBA actually carries. What we're going to do is we're going to add the cost and we're going to add the opportunity cost, and we're going to combine both of them to see how big of a mistake we made. Just kidding. Yeah. So if we add both of them together, Harvard alone would cost you around $406,264. Wharton would cost you $417,292. So both of these combined are like almost $500,000. That's a huge amount of money that you're putting into a piece of paper. Trust me, that's a lot of money. Yeah, you can see the twitching, right? I'm panicking just thinking about the amount of money that we're putting into this. But with INSEAD, what we're saving is $211,000 approximately, combined with the opportunity cost. And the reason for that is only because it's a 1-year program. Now, I understand that INSEAD is not as global a name as Harvard is. My dad still struggles to say INSEAD. He thinks I studied at INSEAD, but that's fine. Harvard he would have known. But it's $200,000 less. I'm not complaining. Yeah, that's half. I'm happy. So now the moment of truth. We all want to know how long would it take for you to make your money back, right? So we start with the first basic assumption that you've just graduated and you landed your dream job. And you're absolutely rolling in cash. You're having fun. You had the best 2 years of your life. You have that job now. So a couple of assumptions that I have over here. I'm going to have a pre-MBA salary and a post-MBA salary. Pre-MBA salary, same as the opportunity cost, I've assumed to be $80,000. Post-MBA salary for Harvard and Wharton, I've assumed to be $175,000. This comes from the employment reports from these schools respectively. And for INSEAD, it's going to be $119,300. Now, what I've done is I've taken the differences for both of them, and the differences are $95,000 for Harvard and Wharton, and for INSEAD, approximately $40,000. You don't have to assume whatever your salary is. I've just taken a ballpark figure of $80,000. The lesser your payback period would be, because essentially your difference would be larger, which means that you make your money back much faster. But then again, this is a variable number, and I've chosen very average numbers for this, so you have a ballpark idea of how long would it take you. So if you want to see the overall detailed breakdown of this, so for Harvard and Wharton, it would take you approximately 4.5 years for you to make your money back. What we're doing is we're dividing the overall cost of the Harvard program, $410,000 approximately for both of them, and we divide that by $95,000, which means approximately 4.28 and 4.39 years. It's hard to think of years in points, so let's just assume 4.5 years. Within INSEAD, what's happening is, because you've got a shorter period of the overall program, but there's also a smaller post-MBA salary, and hence the overall difference is only of $40,000, and the payback period is 5.5 years. So yeah, INSEAD is the budget option within these MBAs because it's a 1-year program, but then again, your post-MBA salary is way lower. So it depends on what you're sort of looking at, which geography you're looking at, which work authorizations do you have, what's your previous industry experience. So it depends on a lot of things. But then again, this is the overall bird's eye view of what's going to happen, what you should expect if you're an average person from an MBA class. But it's hard to know if you're that average person or not. You might be the bottom of the class or the top of the class, because your grades are not going to matter in terms of the kind of jobs you're going to get. But given that I'm an MBA, I want to look at my return in more than one way. Other than payback period, I also want to see the overall ROI over a 10-year period. And if what I'm earning, is that actually worth the investment? So if we look at this over a 10-year period, what happens is your salary over a 10-year period is going to be $1.75 million. And let's just assume you have the same salary throughout, right? We're not looking at the progression of salaries. But your pre-MBA salary would have been approximately $800,000. Now, the net gain that you've seen within both of these numbers is almost $1 million, but $950,000 to be exact. Now, the investment that you put in during the same time was for Harvard and Wharton was approximately $400,000, and for INSEAD $200,000. But the net gain for INSEAD was much smaller, which was about $400,000. So the ROI that this gives you, and to be very exact with the numbers, I'll give the detailed numbers on the side so you can see, is 133% for Harvard, 127% for Wharton, and 86% for INSEAD. So I feel like these are pretty good numbers, but obviously this comes with a lot of variables, and take this with a grain of salt, because this is for the average of the class. You can be at the top of the class and you can make much more than this, or you could make much worse than this. And that's a reality, especially in the given current economic situation. That's a reality everybody should be aware of. And then again, there's another viewpoint going on, that are MBAs even that essential? Because I'm aware of quite a few companies which do not overpay for you if you have an MBA or a master's degree, because they don't need one. They feel like their jobs essentially are that MBA. They provide you with that knowledge, which I can understand to an extent. In quite a few of the jobs, the kind of things that I was doing at the job, it was sort of impossible to learn that in school, given the different kind of industry students go into. So you learn a lot on that job, specific to that job. Do you need another degree to have a management position within the same company? Maybe if you come from a technical background, but essentially otherwise you do not. So for quite a few people, maybe doing an MBA would hold zero value at all in terms of their career progression. But my final thoughts, there's one thing that's cheaper than an MBA. That's hitting the like and the subscribe button. I've never done this before, but please do. Hit the like and the subscribe button. It's for free. I guarantee you that. Nobody's going to come back asking you to pay back. And maybe you'll get some more value from these videos in the upcoming more videos if I make more. I hope I do. But see you. Thank you so much. Goodbye.